These are two homemade tools, the KX9 100 and the KX9 200. Just fictitious names I made up. What they are for is painting straight lines. Whether it's a thin line with a rigger or a straight line with a 1-inch wide brush in a glaze. Paint edge guide or trim edge guide. And then what I've done is I've added bolts. Initially I did try screws, but bolts work much more effectively. And then I usually trim off the ends so that the brush, when you're using a brush, you have something that is hitting the metal midway in the ferrule. Now you do have to take into account the length of the hairs on your brush. You do not want, when you're using this, to be resting the bristle on the metal. Often when you're doing this, you're not doing it straight up and down, you're at an angle, so you need to take that into account as well. The difference between the two is just the KX9 200 is twice as long, or 24 inches long. Now in this particular case, I'm working on a canvas much longer than 24 inches. I made this U box that has indoor-outdoor carpet on it that I slip over the canvas so as not to scratch it. This one is 72 inches long, and at the far end you can see I have a little tab at the end that has carpet on it, and that's adjustable over its length, so I can adjust it to different size canvases, and that just allows it to slide on the canvas without scratching it again. I'm going to be starting these sun rays on the darker part of the forest, so you don't want to use white, so I'm mixing up a purple using the white, blue, red with a little bit of yellow ochre in there to desaturate the purple. I've thinned this paint down with water quite a bit because we don't want this paint too thick. Starting at the edge of the darker part of the forest, I'm using this purple color that I mixed up, and I'm laying down a streak. Now with a second brush, which I've dampened in with water and squeezed out with my fingers, I'm going over that paint streak and thinning out the edges, blurring the edges and stretching it out farther into the shadow area. Don't use paper towel, use your fingers to squeeze out. It's very important that you add the right amount of water here. Too much and it's just going to puddle, and too little it's going to dry on you. I just added some more paint and now cleaning, coming back in with the clean brush again to stretch it out and to feather the edges. You're going to do this several times, and you're not trying to do this in one pass. You're gradually building up how much you have. You want a nice soft blend to this whole ray. I clean the brush frequently and re-dampen it and squeezing it out with my fingers. You're going to do this very frequently. As long as you keep cleaning the brush and keeping the paint on the canvas wet, you're going to be able to continue to work this, thinning it out, adding more, thinning it out. Better to take too much off and have to add more than leaving too much on, because once it is dry, you're not going to be able to get that off. This frequent cleaning of the brush does not require that you squeeze out the excess water onto the floor. In fact, you'd probably be better off doing it into your water container. Repositioning the KX9 10,000 just to have a look at what I've done, and then setting it up for the next spot. When moving the KX9 10,000, try not to put that foot pad into wet paint, just so that you don't take any chance at marking what you've already done. When repositioning the KX9 10000, don't slide it, lift it up and place it down at the next position. This helps to avoid blurring or marking what you've already worked on. As you're working on this, you may find that you've added too much water. You can tell that there's too much water by the way it pools in the texture of the canvas. You can deal with this one of two ways. You can continue to work it, going back and forth, gradually lifting the paint out of the texture, or you can get a clean dry brush and stroke back and forth, lifting the paint out of the texture. Switching colors now, we're going into a light orange color. This is the color for the upper part of the rays, which are in the lighter part of the forest or closer to the sun. We're starting up in the lighter area, but we're still stretching this color down over top of the purple that we already laid down. But we are trying to keep this mostly to the center of the ray or the lighter part of the ray. The idea here is to have as many different layers and colors in the ray to give that natural change in density through its length. Here I'm resorting to doing it freehand. You certainly can do it this way, but one of the things you have to try to maintain is a nice straight line. And the body has a natural tendency to arc through the shoulder or through the elbow, depending on where you're painting from. This is whiter now. And this is not going to go all the way down. With a clean dry brush, I'm just very lightly softening the edges to get a nice smooth blend. A little risky doing this when the first glaze is not dry, but I am fully expecting to do this again. That was the camera lady singing, not me. I have two brushes in my hand, one a clean one and one with paint on it. So I'm quickly switching back and forth depending on what the application needs.
You are my sunshine, my only sunshine.
I don't think she was singing about me. The shorter upper strokes are much easier to do freehand than with the guide. The hesitation there about squeezing the brush out was whether or not I needed the paint on the canvas to be a little wetter. As long as you can keep the paint wet, you can keep working it. But the more you work it, the more you're going to take it off. And especially if the paint that you're working on top of is not properly cured, there's a chance you may take that off as well, so be careful. Just because paint is dry to the touch, it doesn't mean it's cured. It can take up to 48 hours to cure properly. And as long as it's not cured properly, there's always a chance you can delaminate it from the canvas surface.